Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of The Human in Me. You are here with your boy Mpomo, and I am joined by Ndamulelo once more.
Welcome.
Welcome again. I hope you had an awesome week.
The week was cool. It was
Plus, it was vague.
Exactly. It was very relaxing. What about your week? Did you enjoy it?
Yeah, everything was okay, and during vague you do try to push here and there, and you try to relax here and there. So that's basically what I've been up to.
Damn.
No, that's cool. Okay, so today we're doing episode number 12, and we are going to be talking about social influences on our behaviors. And one of the few things that we wanted to touch on is the first one is social proof, and then the second one is the influence of like social influence on desires, right? Right. I'm pretty much sure you've been to a place where a new place where you did not know anyone there, right? And then as soon as you walk in that place and you don't know anyone, right, the only way for you to know the appropriate ways to behave in such an environment, you have to look at the people around you.
Exactly.
Right? So we have to look at the people around you to try to see, how people behave as a collective. Obviously, you don't look at one person and be like, okay, this is how people behave in this place. So you look at, quite a few people to have an idea of how you're supposed to go about acting, right? And I'm pretty much sure. And you usually see this thing like when you walk into a room and then you find people, sitting there with their phones, right? The first thing that you do when you sit down is
pull out your phone, basically.
You take out your phone because at the time it seems like you find everybody doing it, and it seems like, okay, so if everybody has their phone, that means it's cool for me to have mine. If you're in a meeting and everybody has their phones on the table, you are more likely to put yours there. And if people don't have their phones on the table, the chances of you doing that are very slim. Because part of the reason why we're saying why we are touching on this thing is because we want you to realize that most of how we behave in our environment is basically dependent on what other people do.
Yeah.
Right. It has a little bit of conformity into it, but we're not gonna touch on that. We're just gonna focus on, those social proofing specifically.
Okay.
And then another thing, yeah.
Wait, is it accurate if I were to define social proofing as the validation conformity gives you in terms of, it's like conformity's sister type of thing, where
it's you could call it a conformity sister type of thing.
You get the social proof through the proper conformity in terms of, I approve that you're socially adequate, adept.
Definitely. Because I mean, like the reason why. Okay, I'm sorry about that. The reason why you want to know the appropriate behavior is so that you don't do anything that might get you kicked out of the group.
Exactly.
So you try to filter out the things that you shouldn't do and just focus on the things that you can do, so that the people around the area that you're in can basically be like, okay, we see what you're doing. You can move into the group. So it's the whole thing that we need to realize that we don't function independently. Our behaviors don't come to us independently. We always,
social creatures.
We're social creatures, and we always look at other people to see what they are doing for us to know, what would be the appropriate way of going about acting in certain environments. And it's helpful when you like start to look at things that way, right? Because it kind of gives you the power to realize just how much power you have, right? In help, you realize how much power you have in being influential to other people. Like you don't have to be like a celebrity for you to have influence on the lives of other people. You literally don't need to do that. You just have to act in certain ways, and the moment people realize that those certain ways are working, they are going to gravitate towards what you're doing, and eventually, obviously, they they will start to emulate what you do. But obviously this is not always the case, because I mean, like, you've seen how people behave towards successful people. When they look at someone successful, it's almost like they see their enemy, so they don't even want to move close to that person, because it's just like, yeah, stay away from me, which is kind of sad, because I mean, like, you can learn a lot from successful people, whether you like it or not, but you can learn a lot. There's always something to learn from other people. You see?
Yeah, I think when you were talking, it popped up that social proof is so ingrained in survival, because basically it has to do with the communication of your wants, needs, and desires, right? And the more you can do that, the higher chances of your survival, right? And the more you can communicate in a manner that, or use a language that, which is a conformity, basically the language that the group understands more clearly, then the group has a higher chance of survival, right? You're less likely to be ostracized, which is why people need social proof so much, right? Because if you don't have the social proof, then you're not in the pack. If you're not in the pack, then you're not gonna really, you don't have like high chances of survival.
That's true. That's
so
true.
Yeah, I think it's deeply ingrained, and it's basically primarily centered on communication, because I remember when as a kid, right? Sometimes I would act weird, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it's usually the girls who pick it up above anyone else, because that's what girls do. They learn to communicate. That's all they do, basically. As children, guys just catch up on it later, and then we catch up on the game of communication. But like, girls are more adapted to communicating, because they're the ones who have to look at these things in order to choose, right? Because they choose who they control who gets to mate and who doesn't, right? Which is why it's such a big deal for guys to study girls, and they always wonder what's going on and how to communicate to girls, because they are the gatekeepers to basically what every guy wants. So
okay.
So basically, I remember as a kid, and I would do something weird, right? And that just shows you
what would happen when you, like, how would they react
the
to
girls spark out, like they probably would just react in a way that would show that that's kind of weird. You're kind of different, right? And sometimes it can be used as a way to get you in line in terms of
definitely
you don't want to be ostracized, right? But at the same time, I don't want to go too far.
Let's not go. Let's not go deep into the whole thing.
I was gonna go on the ostracizer, like.
When you mentioned something about the thing that you said about girls picking up on being obviously the first ones to pick up on some weird behaviors and all that, and like you said that they are trying to filter out the ones that are suitable and the ones that are not. It kind of reminded me of the fact that the whole thing where desire, for example, right? A lot of people, I've seen a lot of people saying that, why is it that when you have a boyfriend or girlfriend, everybody wants you?
Oh, okay.
Everybody wants you. And then when you're all single and shit, nobody wants to fuck with you, right?
Yeah, that's also social proof in its own way.
Yeah, so the thing that you can see from that is this whole thing that desire, like Robert Greene has said, like desire is a social illusion. We like what other people like, and we would like to take from others what they have, which is basically what happens when you're like in a relationship. People would want you because somebody has you, and they would want to take you away from that person, right? So obviously people go about it differently in the world, but the most important thing here is to realize that equipped with that information, it kind of makes it easy for you to realize that sometimes you pursue someone not so much because they have something special about them, right? But so much because other people want that person. So in a way, you are in a race with other people, and you want to make sure that you beat them to the game. You don't want to be the one who didn't get the best, of the best. So with obviously with that, another thing that we can realize from this thing is that, like I just said, man, like you just have to make sure that when you pursue someone, you pursue that someone because of the things that you saw in them that appeal like most to you, not because other people want that person,
Exactly.
not because
Exactly.
you wanna get that famous guy or that famous girl, because it doesn't last.
Yeah, you're gonna get lost in the crowd.
You're gonna get lost. I remember I was listening to a podcast the other day, right? And then they were talking about this whole thing, dude. You'd be surprised to find that, like there are women who use celebrities out there. Like women who do hit and runs on celebrities. I was so shocked when I saw that, when I heard that like this guy was telling me, or was saying on the podcast, that he once had a meeting with this other celeb, right? And obviously when you're having a conversation with someone, it gets to a point where you become vulnerable. And this guy made mention of the fact that he's been struggling with a lot of girls who come into his life, right? And for him, he thinks that, oh yeah, I finally found the one. And then as soon as they're done with him, they're like, she's gone. It's almost like when they look at him from afar, they see this mystical creature, this type of God. And then as soon as they go there and they discover something different from what they expected, they pull away, they disappear. That's what I meant when I said that. Like when you do find yourself in a position where you pursue someone, make sure that you don't pursue someone because other people want them. Because you have to realize that the things that we like are influenced by the environment we find ourselves in. You can look at Paul, like VW, the model of cars, VW. A lot of people want to have VWs these days, right? And for me, when I look at the VW, I'm just like, oh, VW is like, I shouldn't have said that. but for me personally, VW is just like the like the middle range between cheap cars and luxury. It's just like in the middle, right? It doesn't excite me that much when I look at a VW car. It's just a car. But people go crazy when they think about it. That if it, like people, you should hear people who talk about VWs. You'd swear that they see God when they see that thing. And part of the reason why that's the case is because if you look at people who own VWs, right, the majority of them are famous, Ekasi. Right. Okay. Yeah, the majority of them are famous. This is part of the reason why a lot of people want to have VWs. Well, that's my opinion. That's what I think, that it's because of the hype that comes around you when you have a VW. So it's this thing that desire, like the things we desire, are influenced by the environment we find ourselves in. I mean, like people who grow up in rich environments, they don't even think about a VW. VW is just a toy to them. When they talk about things that the things they desire are different from the things that we desire. We are told, because they are at a level where the most expensive cars are the things that appeal most to them. I mean, like I used to not understand why anyone would buy a motorbike. Like a motorbike, right? Like I just don't get it. Why the fuck would you buy a motorbike? But people buy motorbikes. People love motorbikes. People like people have that thing for motorbike. You'd see someone just sitting there washing their motorbike, and you're just like, wow. You're watching your motorbike, like seriously, So it's just that thing I would say. Like if you realize that, you have to realize that desire is something that is influenced. Like the things that you desire, the things that you love, the things that you gravitate towards are influenced by the environment that you like, the social environment that you find yourself in. So when you go through life, you have to try to filter out the unnecessary things from the you know, like the unnecessary desires from that list of the things that you want or the things that you desire. Because I mean, like, the truth is that there's this other quote by Jordan Peterson, right, where he says that you can have everything that you want, but you have to figure out what it is. Because if you don't figure out what it is that you want, you are going to find yourself going to this thing, to that thing, to that other thing, to that other thing. And you never get full satisfaction, because the satisfaction that you get is temporary, it's momentarily. It only exists so far or so long as the novelty effect is still playing its part. As soon as you get familiar with that, then you get rid of it. You know, it's so you need to figure out what it is that you want and go for it. You can have everything that you want, but you have to figure out what it is. You know, like you have to narrow down your search, because it's the same thing as this thing of what do you call it? Going to like places, right? Like traveling, right? Even with traveling, it's still the same thing. You know, you have to realize that you can go to China, go to Japan, go to Greece, go to Roma. Is it Roma?
Everything.
Yeah, so you can go to Roma, you can go to, you know, all those places, right? But those places will only appeal to you so far as the novelty effect is still there. As soon as you get used to them, then you just like, and then you move away. So, but if you narrow down your search and you just search for that one specific thing that you feel like would give meaning to your life, and then you take out all the other things, right? You'll always find ways to enjoy what you already have. Yeah, like you just, you know, keep on, you know, enjoying what you already have, because there's no need for you to go out, because you like I said, you can have everything that you want, but you have to figure out what it is that you want.
That's that's pretty interesting.
I know, but I know. I know. Like even I used to find myself in such a situation where when you have money, you can go everywhere. But that's the thing. There's so many things to do, and you don't even know where to start. You know. But if you have money, and then you know that okay, this is what I want to do, then you just go straight to that thing, and you're done. You derive all the pleasures that you can get, and then you're done.
I think. I also think that when you're talking about figuring out what you want. Into my mind, it just brings back what we talked about in a previous podcast about individualism and collectiveness, right? Right, and then when it comes to social proof, right? I realized that I don't know, but I realized the downside that could come out of social proof.
Yeah, there are always downsides, obviously,
because. The downside, it's the same as in collectivism, right? Where you might lose yourself.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, you like the idea of the self, innit?
Like, exactly. You might lose yourself in being part of the collective, and you don't realize your desires and your own needs. Right?
Yeah.
Because when you talked about Jordan Peterson and knowing what you want, right? I mean, he's like American, so. That's like a philosophy that's Western oriented, and it's individual.
Yeah.
So basically, it's like, you have to find the balance between the collective and the individual.
That's true.
And you have to realize how they come together with each other, so that they're not in conflict.
And obviously, you can have them at 50%. You have to realize that one will always be 70, and another one 30, another one.
Not really. It's not about that in terms of the percentage, but it's more. Okay, I guess for me, I'd say 100% of my individualization is still 100% for the collective, because the individual helps the collective. It's just I have to help the collective in ways that satisfy the individual completely.
Makes sense that way.
Exactly. So it's not really about splitting yourself, but it's basically it's about finding out where you fit in terms of the collective.
That's a strong one. That's a strong one.
Because that's basically like the conflict you might have in terms of family life and career, whether you should follow your passion or
Yeah.
follow your
Yeah.
it becomes even difficult with the circumstances that that you're around,
Mm-hmm.
because those circumstances and you know that kind of expectations around you, the people that you live around,
That's true.
is going to basically determine what you can do as a person and what they expect to get from you. But basically,
I don't know what she wants, bro. But I just told it to go that way. Okay, and
seriously.
it's cool. Yeah, I told it to go that. I don't even know what she wants. Uh huh.
But basically,
Okay.
I wanted to talk about the determining factor,
The determining factor of.
how you find what you want. It's basically, which we've already talked about that, but it's basically um, knowing your needs and not being caught in like separating needs and desire, basically, because like the desire is gonna be more influenced and determined by you know the social context and expectations around you, right? But your
Yeah.
needs will always be stationary, right?
Yeah, but that's
So
the thing. You so see, here's the thing, right? I agree with what you're saying, right? I agree, and I agree with you 100%. But this is the thing, right? Before you can even get to a point where you start having desires, they will depend on the environment that you grow up in. Does that make sense?
that's true. That's what I'm saying.
Right? They will depend on the environment that you grow up in. So you need to be careful of that. Like, I mean, like you cannot have that's why you cannot that's why you cannot possibly do something you've never seen before. Every single behavior that you project to the world is basically something you've seen before, right?
Okay.
Even the way you interact with people who are going through tragedy, even the way you interact with people who are happy, you behave in ways that you've seen other people project
That's
for
true.
you to know. Oh, so when someone is happy, this is what I have to do. Because I mean, like someone would be like, you happy, you need to be happy for your friends. But if no one has ever showed you how to be happy for your friends, how are you going to do that? Right? You need some template, something to work on, someone to show you good thing. This is how you act towards your friend when they've achieved something. You know. But yeah, but I get what you're saying. But the thing that I wanted to add is that it's very important at the very same time which is basically what you just said, right? It's very important for you to realize that even the desires that you have are influenced by the environment that you're in, where you come from. They will like, what do you call this thing? People, okay, I usually say that there's no such thing as free will, but we're not gonna go down that path. Everything has been determined, whether you like it or not. Look at it this way. Let you look at it this way. Okay, so here's the thing, right? Like if you've ever been being if you've ever been mugged before, right? Obviously you are going to share the information with other people, and then you start to brainstorm how you would act towards that, right? I go out there and then I try to mug someone. I mark someone that you've already come into contact with, right? When I do that, they are going to respond the same way that you did, but in a different way, obviously, like with some adjustments, because obviously situations are not the same, right? So that person responds the same way with a little bit of their attaching to the whole thing, right? And then the whole thing is dissipated, and then they are going out there and then they're going to teach another group of people, and then the person that I taught how to, like mark someone who saw that behavior from me is going to do the same thing to another person, and they are going to do the thing to the person that you've already come into contact with, right? So ultimately, this ends up being like an interconnection of webs, like events that literally that just connect with one another indirectly, all because of the interactions that we have, right? So that's this example. I wanted to use it as a means to show you that this is another thing that we have to realize. Our parents teach us something, right? And then we go into the outside world. They teach us something that they learned when somebody did something to them, right? We are going to come across someone, that particular person, who has taught other people, to act in that particular way. And my interaction with that person is going to
Intertwine.
this is the thing. Like, this is the thing. This is the thing, right? like I'm trying to explain this thing in a way that's gonna make sense. That's gonna make sense. So your parents teach you something, you know, that you take into the world, right? My parents teach me something, and their parents are teaching them different things, right? And those things that we learn from our parents, it's something they too had to learn from somebody else, right? Of which they learned in response to someone who did something to that somebody else. We are told. So this is just to show Uguti, like, as much as we feel like, or as much as we think that because we live in the 21st century, we know better than our parents, we don't. Like, when it comes to social interactions, we're literally doing the same things they've been doing all these years. Despite technology is there, right? We get that technology is there. That's the only difference that exists between them and us. And even if technology is still there, we're still behaving in the same ways when we're using, what do you call that thing? Social media. Like, if you look at social media, you will see, don't people complain on social media? But I mean, like, at the very same time, we have to realize that, I mean, like, we still do the same things that they've been doing all these years. Like, there's just no way around this whole thing. The behaviors are still there. Like, the underlying, you know, like, psychological effects into how we interact with the world is basically still the same. So, yeah, we're not really that different from what our parents have taught us. And this is the reason why, I mean, like, there's so much connectedness between every single person that you've ever come across in your life. So I mean, like, also you have to factor in those things and realize that ultimately there's literally little difference between what our parents have been doing and how they've been interacting with each other. Because the same way that they've learned to interact with each other is basically the things that they've instilled into us. But obviously we don't realize, and obviously they won't be the same as what they've been, you know, what they've been through, because, you know, circumstances change and, you know, conditions change, obviously. But the conditions don't change that much, you know, into how we go about interacting with the world.
Exactly.
If that was the case, I mean, like, we wouldn't be behaving like people from 1600. We wouldn't. If you know, like, if conditions actually changed us that much, we wouldn't be behaving like people in the 1600s. Because the same thing that happened back in the days are still happening today. There's little difference between them. The only difference is the manner in which they occur. But the underlying thing is that they are still there. They're still okay, whether you like it or not. They are still there. So, yeah, I mean, I would like, okay, sharp. So we basically have come to the last minute of our podcast. So, and these people are making noise, so we're gonna have to cut this thing.
I like the fact that what we're doing now is basically highlighting the influence of social interactions, and you know, it's basically like on a consciousness level. Because I remember you saying something about free will, and I was like, yeah, but you know, if you don't believe there's free will, then that defeats the whole purpose of us being conscious, because you being conscious means you see what's going on unconsciously. Now, there would be no free will to someone who was completely living unconsciously. But
unless we have different definitions of what free will is, or unless I'm the one who doesn't understand it, because that's also a possibility.
Yeah, okay, probably.
Yeah. Well, maybe we should look into it next week and start talking about free will and determinism.
Exactly. Yeah.
It just gave us an idea for the next episode. Let's touch on it next week then.
Yeah.
You know, because I realized that it's almost 4 p.m. Okay. So yeah, thank you guys for staying with us this long, and I hope that you did learn something from the podcast. As I always say, part of the reason why the podcast exists is so that we can acquaint you with what makes us human, and from that information we can get to realize how we come to be who we are. If we can do that, we'll be able to understand the people that we are, and if you can understand the people that we are, we'll be able to understand the people that we interact with, you know. So yeah, you become a better person to yourself, you become a better person to other people, you become a shitty person to your own self, you become a shitty person to other people. So yeah, thank you very much guys for listening to this episode.